Hey, welcome everyone to Garmin Logic Tips and Tricks GTN and G1000. The webinar for you today. My name is Paul Yeomans and I'll be your instructor for the next hour. We have really, it's more than just the GTN and G1000. It's really more about the Garmin Logic and the things that are going to cross most, if not all, of our navigation platforms. So you can have the confidence and the comfort of being able to go from a GNS unit to a GTN or a GNS to a G1000 or vice versa. Obviously, we want everyone to take the proper precautions as you prepare for each flight, but drawing some similarities in the comparisons between these platforms could give you an edge whenever you're flying a different aircraft or maybe considering upgrading to a bigger avionics suite or something like that. So as we jump into there, I said my name is Paul Yeomans. I've been teaching on Garmin Avionics for about 8 years. I was 5 years in a university setting where I was a flight instructor, check instructor, um, training officer, adjunct professor, and then joined Garmin about 3 years ago. And so been teaching on all of our platforms. So everything from a GNS unit to a 3000, 5000, our advanced systems like weather radar, CPDLC, CCD, VNAV, and that sort of thing. So we're bringing you a variety of information, and hopefully we can draw some similarities and understand why Garmin does some of the things that we do. So with the GTN, G1000, and really all of our navigators, ComNav, Direct to, Holding, and procedures. And hopefully we can squelch some misunderstandings and then give you some tips and tricks for you to be able to be more efficient in the cockpit. So please submit your questions in the questions window on the side of your GoToWebinar application or web page that you're using. We have several colleagues online today ready to answer your questions. And at the end, depending on the questions that we get coming in, we'll answer some of those verbally with you. If you don't get your questions answered today or you think of a question after the webinar is over, please send that to aviationtraining.webinar@garmin.com. It really only helps us to help you to answer your questions and get you to be a more comfortable and savvy pilot out there with our equipment. So for some of these things, we're going to be running a little bit of scenarios, and then we have several other webinars that we have and will continue to do with the scenario-based type training. So, and then you always have the opportunity to practice on your own. So we do offer GTN, TXI, G500, 600 trainers for the PC trainer. The GTN and TXI on the iPad app, those are all free. So to get access to that, you go to GTN trainer, search that on the Garmin.com website, click on that app icon. Should bring you to this page where we scroll down a little bit. We see that gray bar in the center where it says Overview Platforms and Accessories. You click on Platforms, and then down at the bottom, we can see the GTN Trainer app and the GTN XI Trainer app, and that's for your iPad. Additionally, we see that link for the Windows PC. That is for a Windows PC. It will not work on a Mac. Apologies there. We just have not developed that. The PC trainer is not just a GTN or a TXI like the iPad does. It has quite a few. There's the link at the top. And but you can also just do the search that we did as you saw in the browser. So here's what it looks like when we start up the PC trainer. We do have the option to select the navigator and or display. So with the navigators, it's kind of our entire fleet that we still produce for the touchscreen side. Produce and support. So we still have the GTN 750, 650, all of the series. We have the XI. We've been keeping these pretty up to date on the software. And then we also have the GPS family of navigators with the GNX 375, the GNC 355, and GPS 175. So those are available to play with and use, practice, especially in times like these where we may not be flying as much. It's a good tool to go keep your skill up, stay sharp on what you're doing. The last thing you want to do is be heads down when you are out of currency or proficiency in the aircraft. So here's what the display options are. So all three variety of the TXI So the large, the smaller with the landscape and the portrait. You can have up to 4 displays if you're using TXI, and 1 display with the GDU 620. So still got that on there. I know a lot of you operators are still using the GDU 620, which is great. Keep using it, and that's a tool for you to be able to use. If you are using the 4 displays with the TXI, it's great to be able to see it. It can require a lot of processing power, so it may require a high performing computer. So if that's the case and you don't have that, just limit it to 1 or 2. We do have the option on the GTN to enable demo mode. So, and this is in your aircraft with your actual GTN. Just hold the direct 2 key whenever you apply power to your avionics, and it should come up into demo mode. I don't use this at all anymore because I have the iPad trainer and I have the PC trainer. So it's kind of there. If maybe you only have a Mac and you don't have an iPad, then you do have that option to still play with that. Plug it into ground power, turn on your demo mode, and practice with it. Of course, don't fly in demo mode. It won't be giving you accurate information. Be very dangerous. All right, additionally, we have the PC trainers for the G1000. So if we go to Garmin.com and search G1000 PC trainer, then we have these 12 different PC trainers available to us. So Piper Archer, the Cessna Caravan, Kodiak, different Pipers, King Air, a number of different aircraft that are available to you, including there's the Cirrus Perspective Plus. So all of those are available, and we don't have every single G1000, but a lot of them are there. The cost for these is $49.95 just to be able to cover the production. But we want to have that available to you so you can keep practicing and keep the skill. Do check the system requirements before making a purchase, please. All right, so comm nav and surveillance. We have selectable frequencies. Again, we're going to try to be drawing conclusions and comparisons between our different platforms. So selectable frequencies here, that is in the cyan box. So the cyan box right there tells me that it is editable. So let's take a look at the GTN. So here's the GTN, and this is the PC trainer that I have. So on my comm side, right here on the top left-hand side, I see the text is in cyan. So typically that tells me that it's editable, and we're going to cover colors here in a few minutes. But if I twist a dual concentric knob, that's what's going to be changing. Just a little different how-to on the G1000, right? Just twisting your comm knob or your nav knob rather than just a single knob on the GTN or just touching the standby. Additionally, on the comm on the G1000 NXI, we have reverse frequency lookup. So the green tells me that is what I am actively talking on. So 133.0 on my COM2 is what's active on the transmission. And its KIXD tower is kind of the G1000 best guess of who we're talking to. So based on our geographical location and the frequency that we have put in there, it is saying you're probably talking to KIXD tower. Now that is different than the nav side where it is decoding. So over here on the left-hand side where I see I have 108.5 in both my number 1 and number 2, and it says IOSS. This right here is actually the decode. It's listening to the Morse code for us without having to listen audibly, and it's telling us that the signal is live and it is working. At least the the signal. So that's a decode. The reverse frequency lookup is a best guess. So let's take a look at what the GTN looks like. So back on the GTN, I can see at the bottom of my COM1 right here, it says KRCM AWOS, and that is the correct frequency for our location. But as you can imagine, if I had 122.8 or 123.0, that frequency is used in a lot of airports and potentially very close together. So it's not going to guarantee the correct frequency, but it is its best guess. Over here on the right-hand side, we have the reverse frequency lookup for ANX VOR and for that ILS on my standby. Now, whenever we have the signal on top, so it says ANX, a little bigger text on top, that is actually decoding. So that's the decode. The bottom is reverse frequency lookup for both the comm and the nav. So we said we talk a little bit about colors, and this could really ease some of your search burden, trying to understand what you're looking at in the middle of your flight. So white text means it's informational, and cyan means that it's editable. So this is going to be true about 99% of the time. So we can see this is a TXI display. I have my airspeed, heading, my baro, VS, and my altitude pre-select. So all my bugs plus baro, those are all editable, right? We already know they're editable because we need to be able to get that information in there. But let's look at the colors and what they're trying to tell us. So over here on the right-hand side, I have image of a G1000 weight planning page. This is used on a number of aircraft. It's not every aircraft, but what we're trying to look at here are the colors. So I have white for informational, cyan for editable. So the basic empty weight, right? We're not going to edit that in the middle of the flight. That's not going to change. However, pilot and stores is going to change per flight. Hopefully your pilot number is not going to change in the middle of the flight, but you'll change it at the beginning. And we have cargo, passengers, all that stuff is editable. And then we have a computed numbers that are not going to be editable because it's using other information. So that's all just informational text for us. So we can kind of look at those numbers, or sorry, those colors and understand what they're doing. The very early G1000s did not comply with those colors. We were still kind of figuring out the branding and how we wanted to do it as a human factor standpoint. And so very early versions might not have that. So if you have a really old version of a G1000 software, you might see some differences. Magenta is typically going to be your active FMS GPS signal. So even on that previous slide, and I'll show you at the top of the screen, that's our active GPS information at the top of the G1000. My ground speed, desired track, ETE, that's all GPS derived. Now, on the bottom left-hand corner of the images here, we have the G1000 flight plan. So my active GPS is going direct to Dulray. In the center of the screen, I have a TXI. My active nav is all over the place. I see my course, it says GPS 1. I have a CDI, it's magenta. At the bottom, it has from KIXD to ANX is active, and then I have my details. So that's my active nav, FMS, GPS. And some airframes call it FMS, some call it GPS on the signal. Right-hand side, that really could be any map that we have because our maps look very similar going from one screen to the next. Of course, the 430, 530, not using that same digital display, so it's going to look a little different. But our icons, everything else is going to be the same. And that leg from LXT to ANX is my active leg. This was taken from a GTN, and we're going to see this image a little bit later. So when I say active FMS or GPS, it doesn't necessarily mean that I am flying with that navigation. I could have green needles up and be flying on a VOR or an ILS, but could also have a magenta, somewhere on the screen, like on my map or on my flight plan page, because the GPS, that active FMS or GPS, is what the GPS is calculating. It is and displaying depending on what you have up on your screen. It doesn't mean that we are flying it. It means the GPS is calculating it and available to you if we want to fly with it. Our AFCS, so it's Automatic Flight Control System, and our Autopilot. So green is going to mean active and white is armed. So this is pretty wide in the industry and how these colors are used. Not all, especially if you have a older autopilot that doesn't allow your arming. They're only active modes or something like that. And it is on our GFC 600 on the DMC 605. It's just a 2-color display, so it's just going to show bold text and regular text to show active and armed. Also, a good clue to look on that is the top is active and the bottom is armed. So active meaning that is what the autopilot is actually doing now, whereas armed is going to mean what is prepared to do if certain parameters are being met. And so some of you might be moving on to a GFC 500 or 600 coming from something that was only active. So we're going to start shifting our gears to go towards arming things in preparation for joining a nav signal or something like that. So now we've talked about colors. Let's move on a little bit to the direct to. So there are a lot of features built into a Direct 2, even some as far back as the 43530 that I would say a vast majority don't even know are there. So we're going to break down the Direct 2 into off-route Direct 2 and on-route Direct 2. And on the G1000, that can be done from the PFD or the MFD, all of the functionality of Direct 2. And we do that by selecting the Direct 2 hard key, just like the GNS 430 or 530. Enter that waypoint identifier, and then enter to confirm. And from my days as a flight instructor, it was like a race with the students. They want to press enter twice so fast. And that's 435 G1000, all the same. But in between the two enters, there's a lot of information. So I type my identifier and I press enter once. It's going to bring the cursor down to where it says activate or enter the Direct 2. But in between those two enters, there's a lot of information. So we're going to get some other features out of this other than present position to a fix Direct 2. So it will always supersede a flight plan. And so what that means is the navigation that's in the flight plan, again, I may or may not be flying on it with my CDI or autopilot or hand flying, but what's in the flight plan, that nav will no longer be there. It will be superseded by the Direct 2 that I place. That's telling the aircraft, or telling the system rather, I want to do something different. I want to navigate to something else. Therefore, the GPS signal is now calculating a different route. Default position is, or default direction is from your present position. So we can kind of realize that that doesn't always have to be the case. So off-route Direct 2, and for this Direct 2, we'll cover the G1000, and then I'll show you on the PC Trainer the GTN. So off-route does not remove the flight plan. It only places a Direct 2 and keeps those fixes in there. So in that first picture there on the left-hand side, I see I am going direct to KDFW. Normally, I would see from a fix to a fix, right? So it'd be from the departure airport to the destination airport. And in this case, I only see direct to KDFW. That means that is an off-route Direct 2. If it was an on-route Direct 2, I would see magenta on a fix in the flight plan. That would tell me that's my active nav. On-route Direct 2 does mean exactly that. It is on our route. So right now I'm going direct to an altitude on this departure. So I'm climbing out at 640 before turning to Dulray or commanding a turn based on ATC. But let's say they say go direct to kegs. So I need to highlight kegs. And the way we would do that on a 435/30 G1000, activate the cursor by pressing that dual concentric knob. The big knob changes which field you are highlighting. So big knob changes the field, little knob edits the field. So if I wanted to change which field I'm highlighting, I take my big knob, scroll it down to wherever I want it. Little knob would edit the field. That means in that case, on a flight plan, it would put a new fix in there. I would type out the fix. So I just want to highlight the field. I big knob down to kegs, and then I press the Direct 2 button. As soon as I press the Direct 2 button, it's going to autofill that information like I see on the right-hand side. If I have a G1000 or a GNS 435/30 that doesn't have a keypad, then this is pretty helpful. I don't want to just type out kegs with big knob, little knob, doing that 5 times. It takes a little while. So I highlight the field, press the Direct 2 hard key, and then I can press enter to confirm. Now, the big difference on route is that it is going to sequence. So once I get to kegs, it's going to sequence to the next waypoint, on to Coop. If I am on an off-route Direct 2, once I get there, like on the previous slide was KDFW, as soon as I get to KDFW, it's going to keep on going on the last track, unless I tell it to do something different or I run out of gas, which of course I'm going to tell it to do something different. So there is the Direct 2. I have magenta with a single line to kegs. That definitely will sequence on the waypoints. That is different from activate leg. So kegs went present position to kegs, right? That was a direct to kegs, present position. But if I was given a clearance to intercept kegs to Coop, then I would want to activate that leg. Now, this could be one of two things. I could have activated Coop as the activated leg, or I got to kegs and it just sequenced onto Coop because waypoint sequencing does occur with an on-route Direct 2. I could, of course, make a off-route direct to and on-route direct to by simply putting that fix into the flight plan. I was already going direct to it. Now that is an on-route direct to, and it will sequence. So we have the question sometimes, how do I activate the leg? Well, either GNS 43530 or G1000, highlight the fix that you want to activate the leg to. So in this case, it would be coupe. So cursor, big knob down to coupe, and then press the menu button. And activate leg should be one of the first things that you could select once you press that menu button. Same thing is going to be true on a GTN G3 5000. You just touch coupe and your waypoint option will be to activate leg. So same thing throughout, just touching on the touch base and pressing menu on the hard key options. We can go direct to anything that we really can select. So we can select any any fix in the database, whether it's a predefined or it's a user waypoint. So we can go to the nearest, right? So if you're on a G1000, on most G1000s, some have an extra systems page. And then on the 43530, you just take the big knob, scroll all the way to the right, Quick little tip there, just twist all the way to the right on the big knob, and you should be on the nearest airports if you haven't already adjusted the page. And now we can activate the cursor, or on a GTN G3 5000, just touch the fix and then press the direct to hard key, and it will autofill that information in there for us. All right, any platform we can activate our range knob. So if you have a range joystick, you have to push that range knob in and move it around. On a 43530, you activate your cursor on this page, and then you can use your knobs to go find the fix. If you can see the fix on the screen, so that means your range settings of being able to see either your intersections, your airports, and your actual range value allow you to be able to see the fix on the screen, then you could select it, press the direct to hard key, and go direct to it, just like this with KBUR. And then, of course, we do the enter to confirm. Now, here's where we were talking about the different things that we could do in between the two enter buttons, right? So we type in KDFW, I press enter once, and it brings the cursor down to activate at the bottom. However, let's look at all the information in between. So if I'm on a G1000, and again, some of the earlier software versions don't allow, but the later ones all do, we can go the direct to vertical navigation. So that means I'm going direct to KDFW and setting an altitude associated with that fix. So if they say cross DFW or proceed direct to KDFW, cross KDFW at 5,000, well, you're probably not going to get that clearance because it's an airport, but you could do that. So VNAV, just put 5,000 right there. And then on the right-hand side, I could do it with the associated offset. So a long track offset is another feature that's not often used, but we can do -3, -5. We can actually do +3 or +5. Some limitations on there as long as it doesn't go, past the last fix in the flight plan, or doesn't go over a different fix, right? So you have a 3-mile fix before that, you put -5. Well, then depending on the aircraft, it might not let you do that. But we can still put the long track offset in there under most circumstances. And one of the best uses is VFR flight. And I want to get down to traffic pattern altitude 3 miles prior to the airport. So on my direct to, I got my airport that I'm going to. My VNAV is my traffic pattern altitude, and I do -3 on the long track offset. And now I'm going to get a great stabilized descent if I'm using the VNAV and I'm set up perfectly when I get 3 miles prior to the airport. Additionally, we have the course. I'm changing the course of my direct to. So normally we think of direct to as present position direct to the fix, right? Which begs, the name direct to. That's how we think of that. But we don't have to go direct to the fix from our present position. We can go direct to the fix from a different course, right? Different course to KDFW. It's going to default to present position. So 096 was my present course when I was going to KDFW, or when I was navigating there. But I could change that to 080. So a lot of good use case here is if you're flying to an airport that does not have an approach and you just want to get lined up laterally. Well, then I can go put in, it's a 080 runway. So I just put 080 as the course and activate, and it will draw me like a 500-mile line, some length like that. And I can go navigate to the runway course. Of course, don't use this as building an approach for IFR. This is visual only if you're going to use it like that. But in the IFR world, I get a heading to intercept sometimes. Intercept the this airway, or intercept this radial inbound to the VOR and then as filed, or what, and the rest of the route unchanged, something like that. Well, in that case, I don't want to go switch to VORs, and I don't want to do the clunky OBS mode, so I'm just going to go direct to course 2 and change that. We're going to have a little example of that in a moment. The last thing on here is the hold, and so we can go direct to a fix and hold. And so depending on the clearance you get, or depending on maybe your request, you could put a hold in there attached to the direct to. So instead of doing 2 separate steps of going direct to, then highlight, then doing the hold, I can do it all in one. So how to remove a direct to? Well, we could just perform an additional navigational function, such as putting in direct to, activating an approach, activating a leg, or canceling the direct to. To cancel a direct to, that will put us back on the flight plan wherever we are now on, the nearest point of the flight plan, basically. So to cancel, we just press the direct to hard key and then press menu, and we are good to go. We just press enter when we're highlighted over cancel direct to nav. On the GTN side, so Direct 2 is going to do almost all of that functionality plus a little bit other. So at the top we have the 3 little windows: the waypoint, the flight plan, and the nearest. And so that just gives us a quick little window. No matter where we are, I don't have to go to the nearest page, but typically that's how I do it. I just go to the flight plan, I just go to the nearest page. So those are a little underused for me, but it's available to you. You might have a great system where just press a direct to, go to the nearest, and you know what airports are there. I will caution you whenever you're using the nearest airports to please put in the nearest airport criteria on G1000, GNS, everything, GTN. When you're putting that nearest airport criteria in there, put it in there for as if you were going to have an emergency. So I don't put 10,000 feet requirement, even though I might want 10,000 feet on my runway, but I know I can get down in 5,000, or, you don't put 5,000 if you know you can get down in 2,000. Because I don't want the airports that might save my life or give me a chance to get down to not be in the list. They might be overlooked because I put a parameter in there that was too big. All right, so down at the bottom, I have the course 2 hold, and if I purchase the search and rescue option, then that would be there as well. So I can go direct to course 2, I can do a direct to hold. The different limitation here on the GTN, it doesn't have the direct to VNAV like the G1000 had, so I would just go direct to, and then on my flight plan page, put the VNAV information in there. So we're going to have a little exercise here, and it's going to place the aircraft at LXT 3,000 knots, 3,000 feet, 0 knots, heading 360. And for this exercise, we're going to do that flight plan LXT to ANX to COU to Lambert St. Louis KSTL. So we're actually going to activate the leg to ANX. So I've got the PC trainer here, and I'm going to place that information in there. So first off, I'm going to press the direct to just to give us a quick little overview like we saw with the G1000. So I don't have any information in there because I haven't selected a fix and I'm not navigating anywhere. I'm just sitting on the ground at Lee Summit as far as my PC trainer is concerned. So I'm going to put a waypoint in there, and I'm going to look at a couple different things. I have the find in the top left-hand corner. So I'm going to select the magnifying glass there. And this find is actually still available in the G1000. So a lot of people don't realize is whenever you're typing in a fix, if you take your little knob and twist it to the left, it actually brings up this same find window with recent, nearest, flight plan, and user. So I use it the most with recent. So I don't like typing in fixes with the GNS units or the G1000. But with the G1000, just twist that little knob to the left, and it will bring back the fixes that I just had. Or maybe I'm not on my flight plan page, but I want to go direct to the flight plan fix. So I just little knob to the left. Flight plan is going to be that first option up. I can go direct to a fix in there. So it can be pretty handy and save you some time with that turn twist on the big knob, little knob. Additionally to those 4 on the GTN, you also have search by name and search by city. Those are also available on most G3000 and G5000. All right, so that's just typing in the fix right there. We do have that flight plan and nearest airport. On that flight plan, we have the first waypoint is automatically put in there for all of our units based on GPS acquisition at the beginning of the flight. Got the course to hold and search and rescue. The activate is in the bottom right hand corner, and once I have a active direct to, then the remove button would become available for us to just remove that. All right, so let's shrink this a little bit so we can see our flight plan. So it's LXT to ANX, COU to STL. So I'm going to start on the map page. I typically fly a lot of the flight between the map page and the flight plan, and I'm guessing that you do the same. If you're on a 650 or a 600 series GTN, you might be flying on default nav a lot if you have a GNS 430. So draw those same conclusions from a GNS 430 is very similar in nature and design to a GTN 650 or 600 series, and a GNS 530 is very similar in the way we do things, in the way that the screen is laid out as a GTN 750. So 530 is more like a 750, and a 430 is more like a 650. All right, so on this map page, I have this kind of triple purpose bar down here, so highlighted in blue right there. Whoops, I'm back up. And this is a CDI bar down here at the bottom. So I have the dot right there, one dot left, sorry, one dot right, 2 dots right, and then we have the left. And then right here I have my active leg, so from A to B, and then my next leg. But the third thing that a lot of people don't realize is that is a shortcut to the flight plan. I don't have to go home and then go to the flight plan. I just touch that right there. So on the 650 series, it's on the default nav page. All right, so let's type in this flight plan. So going to ANX. So typing in ANX. I will go just a little slower on the PC trainer because it can lag a little bit on the webinar portal that you have. So I got ANX on there. Press enter. Now I have my active leg, so my magenta signal going from LXT to ANX, and now I'm ready to type in COU. So add waypoint. We have COU. Now I want to notice up in the top right-hand corner, I have this fast find. This is actually available on all of our platforms, 430 on up to 5,000. As we're typing in the fix, we can see the fast find. And it's also a confirmation, it's COU, it's a VOR DME to Columbia. I can just touch that or go down and press enter. So it's either the same thing. So now I've got that in there, and we'll go add in the final waypoint of KSTL. So now that I've typed in KST, I don't have to press L and enter. I can just come up to the fast find and press that button or touch that button. So now I've got my flight plan in there, and I have my active leg from LXT. Let's see the next step in the scenario here. We're going to do PFD, autopilot heading mode, and demo at 100 knots. And our clearance is going to be intercept the 270 radial inbound to ANX. So I'm going to get my speed going on. Well, first I should be at 3,000. So now I'm up to 3,000, and I'm in heading mode. I'm going to give myself a little more than 100 knots so we can start seeing that moving. So let's go to the map page and see what we're trying to do here. So I have LXT to ANX right there, and I'm flying north so I can see this screen here. There is something in there that ATC is trying to get me out of. Maybe it's traffic, maybe it's weather, maybe it's a TFR, whatever the case is, they're giving me a heading to intercept a radial into ANX. Now that clearance is possible to do it via an OBS mode. So I press OBS, I twist my course, verify everything's good, and then press OBS again to turn it off. If I don't turn OBS mode off after I've adjusted the course, then it will continue flying on that track after getting the COU. But we're going to go on course after we get to ANX to COU. So I'm going to do that with that direct to course view feature. So I'm on heading mode. Changing my nav won't change the automation, right? I'm still flying on the autopilot. So I can go direct to, I'm going to go direct to ANX, but I don't want to go direct to via my present course, because that's what's defaulting. I want to go direct to via that 270 radial. So I touch the course 2, and what I want to draw your attention to is this says course 2. It does not say radial. So I need to do the reciprocal. So reciprocal of 270, pretty easy for us, just 090. So got the 90 and press the enter. So here's your next tidbit of Garmin logic for the GTN or G3000, 5000, all our touch-based systems. Enter, save, activate, all of that sort of thing. It's almost always in the bottom right-hand corner. Cancel, back, remove is almost always in the bottom left-hand corner. So now I'm going to press the enter button. Now the course is set. Last thing I need to do is press the activate button in the bottom right-hand corner. That's like touching enter in a GNS or G1000, activating the ANX, and then touch activate in the bottom right-hand corner. Now I can see that I have the GPS signal drawn for me on a course 090 to ANX. So this is great for when you're getting a heading to intercept clearance. And since the course is set, all I need to do on the autopilot is press the nav button to arm it. And when I get close enough, it's going to automatically switch from heading mode to nav mode and turn on course to ANX, and then COU, and so on. We can see it's an en route direct to at the bottom of the screen at the CDI bar, where we have the direct to symbol to ANX and then the next fix after that. If you have an autopilot that only has the ability to activate, then you would just wait until you get closer to the course and then touch the nav mode and have it switch over then. It's very similar to the navigation control module that we have on the PC trainer. So if I get there, I just press the nav and that would arm it, but in this case, it's going to try to do it immediately. All right, so next thing up on this little scenario is the hold at waypoint. And they say hold east of ANX on the 090 radial, 5 mile legs left turns, expect further clearance, 15 minutes past the hour. So we're going to look at the GTN first and then go over to the G1000. So within the flight plan page, we can hold at any waypoint that is in the database. So that could, we could put it in the flight plan and hold at it. So that includes user waypoints. So we just touch the fix on a touch-based system. So in this case, we're going to touch HOFI. If it's on G1000 or GNS 435, there does not have holds, but G1000, most software versions have it. And we just touch HOFI or highlight it with your cursor and press the menu button. Here we have on the GTN, and hold that waypoint is there on that waypoint option. We can also go hold via a direct to on most platforms. Except for 430, 530. So we type in the fix that we want to go to, touch hold at the bottom of the direct to window. And then as soon as we do that, it brings up our hold at waypoint window. So we want to set the direction, the desired course, and then whether it's inbound or outbound. Now, we hold on the inbound leg, right? We always go inbound. That is what we're holding on. However, that is going to be described as a course. ATC usually gives us the clearance on a radial. Radials are from. So we have to do the reciprocal here and type in the course. So that's pretty easy with the hold east on the 090 radial. I just type in 270 and I'm good to go. However, if I have an odd clearance, like I get sometimes, hold southeast on the 157 radial. I don't really want to do the math. Of course I could, but I don't necessarily want to. So I just type in 157 and then change that direction from inbound to outbound, and it should match up for me. So turn setup, whether it's a left turn or right turn, just touch that to change it. So we would change it from right to left. And then we have our leg type. So change that from time to distance. So make sure you're changing that before you try to change the time or distance respectively. And then we just enter the whatever time we want or whatever distance, depending on the type that we're doing. If you are below 14,000 feet, it's going to default to 1 minute. If you're above 14,000 feet, it's going to default to 1 minute and 30. Here's our preview window in the top right-hand corner and our hold verification. So it's giving it to us in text-based form. and it should be in the form that ATC gave us. So for the most part, unless it's a very odd clearance, real close to the cardinal heading change, then you might get something different. But for the most part, it should tell us what ATC told us. So in this case, it should be hold E of ANX. And if it doesn't say that, that's my clue to go check my inputs to verify that this output is what I'm supposed to be seeing. So the preview window and the hold verification really should take the guesswork out of us putting in a wrong hold or not knowing if we're getting it correctly. We also have that EFC time. So they said 15 minutes past the hour. So I just touched that and changed the time. And that is for alerting purposes only. So it's not going to change your navigation. It's not going to change anything in your flight plan. It is only going to alert you that the time has been reached and it's time for you to query ATC to figure out your next course of action. Touch load the hold and we're in. So once we get the hold, any manually entered hold or a hold that was at the end of an approach, those are all going to be automatically suspended. So going into suspend mode. Now let's take some of the mysticism out of suspend versus unsuspend. So suspend simply means you are suspending waypoint sequencing. And unsuspend means you're removing the suspension and now you're going to continue on with the rest of the flight plan. So if it's automatically going to suspend you, and when I'm in that hold and I want to continue on, if ATC gives me a clearance after crossing Hafi, proceed on course. Well, in that case, I want to stay in the hold until I get to Hafi. So I just unsuspend it. The system will continue to fly the hold until we reach to Hafi, and then we'll continue on to Basay in this case. Other options would be create an additional navigational function, such as a direct to, activate leg, something like that, or something. All of those will do it. We can also touch the hold and press remove. That will be one of the waypoint options. All right, switching over to the G1000, very similar on all of this, just going to be in the hard button and key form. So we can hold at all those waypoints, just highlight the fix that you want to hold at. So activate the cursor, press once, twist the big knob down to the fix you want to hold at, press the menu button, and we can see our options there. We have hold at waypoint and hold at present position. So holding at the waypoint is going to do everything that we just saw with the GTN. So it should look very similarly. So hold west of, and that just happened to be the fix that I was on when I pressed that button. So runway 11. Course, we can change that. It's in cyan. I can change it inbound, outbound. I've got my leg type and distance or time, right or left. And then I got my sanity check here with the preview window and then the hold verification up at the top. EFC down at the bottom. EFC is not required on the GTN or the G1000 or the 35000, but it's in there for alerting purposes. So we can load that. So we can also do the same thing as a GTN, hold via the direct to, and just type in all that information with the big knob and little knob. We also have that hold at present position. So either via the direct to menu or the flight plan menu. So I can just press the direct to button and then press menu, and it'll bring up the image on the left. On the flight plan page, we just press menu as we saw earlier, and we have the option to hold that present position. That will put the fix 1 minute ahead of the aircraft. So you essentially have 60 seconds to get the information in on the hold. Typically doesn't take that long because if you're holding at present position, it's probably just a standard hold depending on your altitude. Left turns, nothing's changed, and right turns. So everything's standard, and you just press enter, and you're good to go. If you're on the GTN, there is not a feature specifically for hold at present position. So our best option is just create a current user waypoint and then do the hold off that user waypoint. All right, moving on to procedures. And I love clarifying some of this stuff in the procedures because it really helps. So on the G1000, when I press the procedure hard key, it's almost identical to what I'm seeing when I press the procedure hard key on a GNS 43530. And it's going to be the same things as I see on the GTN and G3 5000. So pressing that, I have activate vectors to final, activate approach, activate missed approach, and then my 3 selects of the approach, arrival, and departure. So let's take a quick look at the GTN. So I have a number of different ways I can get to the procedure page, either from a user field. So I could change the user field here on the, change that from nearest airport to procedure, something like that. I've got approaches in there. That skips one step. I'm going to go to the home page and press that procedure button. And it is identical. It's just in button form instead of a list. So I have my 3 selects: departure, arrival, and approach. And then I have activate approach, activate vectors, and activate missed. And same exact thing on 35000. So you being able to enter an approach on a GNS unit, you can enter an approach on a 1000, a GTN, a 35000. It's all the same. The buttons are the same. You're going to select, the approach and the transition, put the approach in there, load and/or load and activate, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. So going through that on the G1000, we have the airport in there. Now, typically it's going to autofill an airport. So preferably the airport that you're going to, but maybe you're diverting and your airport isn't in your flight plan yet. I can just press the procedure button from anywhere in the system, and it will still bring up that cyan text at the top of the page where I can change the airport. So it doesn't matter what my flight plan page says, I can always change the airport at the top there. So the cursor will go to the approach, but I can deactivate the cursor, bring it up to where it says airport, and change the airport. When I press enter, it goes to approach. Select the approach, press enter. Select the transition, press enter. Select, if we have time, put the barrel mints in there. If you don't have time, go back later and put the mins so you can get starting on the nav. If you're flying a GTN, your minimums are going to be entered on your display unit. So either your G500, 600, or TXI, something like that. So then I get down to load or load and activate. So first I do a quick little preview, right? Look at the sequence, make sure I understand what's going on, and then I get load or activate. Some systems say load and activate. What is the difference? So load is very simple, takes those fixes and puts them at the end of the flight plan. Doesn't do anything else, doesn't change our navigation. Typically, we hear expect, that's our clue to go ahead and load. And typically when we hear cleared for, that's when we go ahead and activate, but not always. We're going to talk about the verbiage change that we're going to have. So load on the left side, it did not change our nav. Activate does one thing and one thing only, creates a direct to, present position direct to the transition that we selected. If we selected vectors as the transition, then it's still going direct to the final approach fix. It's just not going from present position. It's going direct to the final along the final approach course. So activate creates a direct to. So now that begs the question, do I have to activate the approach? Is that a required thing? And the answer is absolutely not. The question to you is, how do I need to get there? Did they clear me direct to Sarah? If they say proceed direct to Sarah, clear for the ILS 7, I'm going to highlight Sarah, press the direct to key, and press enter, enter. I will navigate to Sarah, and the approach is quote unquote active. It is not different. Creating a direct to and pressing activate in that case is the exact same thing. You do not get any additional benefit by pressing activate. And in some cases, if I was cleared from Sarah to Taylor, but maybe not cleared for the entire approach because maybe somebody was ahead of me on the approach and I'm at an uncontrolled field. Well, in that case, I'm between Sarah and Taylor. I've got magenta navigation, and then they say cleared for the approach. What's going to happen if I press activate the approach now? It's going to turn me around because it does one thing and it goes direct to the transition that we selected. So selecting the approach or activating the approach, we can if we want to. I can go activate the approach by pressing the proc button and selecting activate approach, or I can go direct to Sarah. The image on the right hand side, that's actually a little image of the that find feature. So I took my little knob, twisted it to the left, and now I've got flight plan up as my first option. Scroll down to Sarah. I can do that from anywhere in the flight plan, or sorry, anywhere in the system as I press the direct to button. So that verbiage that we were talking about earlier, expect equals load approach, cleared for, is not going to be activate the approach. It's going to be verify the approach is active. So if I am navigating, I have magenta to any fix in the approach prior to the final approach fix. So any intermediate fix or initial, the approach is active. It will fly. It will fly. It will have sequencing. You know, as long as we have told the airplane to do that with either hand flying or automation, then it's going to sequence and fly the approach. I say any fix prior to the final approach fix because it gets a little tricky when we're going direct to the final. Now, ATC is not supposed to clear you direct to the final for an approach, unless you're doing like vectors to final, that sort of thing. But you're still going to intercept prior to the FAF. So if we go direct to the FAF, we can have some sequencing things that are not going to happen, trying to protect you from doing changes close to the ground and close to your final airport there. And you might not get vertical navigation. So we do want to join prior to that. So any fix prior to the FAF, your approach is active. If you got magenta, you're good. If my approach immediately follows the last fix in my flight plan, I load it. I don't need to necessarily activate it. As long as I can verify the sequencing will go to that fix, then I'm good to go. And could activate. So if they vector me in between Taylor and Sarah, then I can activate that leg, and that actually is going to probably be vectors to final. But so I could do either one, and it would do the exact same thing. Sometimes people would like to use activated leg if you have multiple intermediate fixes that have step downs. So I don't necessarily want to do activate vectors to final, even though that might be what I'm getting. I want to comply with those step down fixes prior to the FAF. All right, so let's look at the GTN for just a moment. So we've got the procedures button. We press that, it brings up the procedures page. I'm going to touch approach. I'm going to go load the ILS 6 into St. Louis. So I've got St. Louis in there. It's pre-filled, but nothing is stopping me from changing that airport. And so then I come over here to the approach, and I'm going to select ILS 6. Now, on the GTN, an important note, which is different than the G1000, is that it is automatically selecting vectors as my transition. It is a lot easier to go from having loaded a transition to loading vectors, because remember, I can just press the procedure button, and then I've got activate vectors to final. So I can quickly go from having loaded a transition to vectors, but it's not as easy as going from vectors to a transition. So I'm going to change that pretty much every time I fly an approach, unless I get vectors on this approach every single time. I know I'm going to get vectors. Well, in that case, yeah, go ahead and load vectors. But if you're unsure, go ahead and load the transition. In this case, I only had one transition, and FTZ is pretty much on my route of flight from the Kansas City area over to St. Louis. Now I've got it in there. I've got my little preview. Now I have the option to either load the approach or load the approach and activate, which is the same as we saw on the G1000 where it just said activate. I'm going to load the approach to ILS, so it says GPS guidance for monitoring only. We, of course, want to have the raw signal to be legal. So now I have the approach banner right there, and you'll see the same thing on all of our units. We see that approach banner right there. I could delete the whole thing at once. My nav did not change. I can scroll up and see I'm still going direct to ANX from that deviation we had earlier. And here is another important note about all of our systems. They only hold one procedure of one kind at one time. So right now, if I wanted to change from the ILS 6, wind's changed, I want to go to another runway. Do I have to remove this approach first? And the answer is going to be no. Because the system only holds one approach at one time, I have no need to remove the first one. So instead, I'm just going to select the approach banner. I could go to the procedure button on the home page, or the G1000 or 435, just press the procedure button and select approach and change the approach. So I'm going to ILS 11. I'm going to change the transition to SISD, and I'm going to go ahead and load that approach. Notice that ILS 6 is gone. So whenever I am changing runways or changing, if you got sidestep, you're doing an ILS 6 left and you get changed to ILS 6 right, well, I don't need to remove the first one, right? Let's minimize our button pushes as much as we can, and we'll just load the new approach. It's going to automatically remove that first one for me. So if you liked what you saw today, I do thank you for joining us. We do have more training available. If you go to flygarmin.com/training, we have our e-learning courses that are available for purchase, and we also have instructor-led courses and custom classes that you can find on that webpage. If you do have more questions, please send them in. If you don't get them answered today, again, please send them to aviationtraining.webinar@garmin.com. Also, we have a short survey when this webinar closes. If you don't mind, just take a couple minutes and fill that out. It's just a couple questions, and those help us to improve our products, improve our training products, and bring more valuable information to you. So our goal is to create better users and or help you develop yourself, right? Becoming a better pilot using the avionics. Not to mention we share the skies with you, and we like to share the wealth of knowledge. So please send in those questions and or surveys. Matt, do we have any questions?
I think if you could go into a little bit more detail on where we can find the PC trainers for the both the GTN and the G1000.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring up that web page that I had from earlier. So this is Garmin.com. So I'm scrolling up to the top. We got Garmin.com, and I just went to the search search button up at the top right-hand corner. And for the GTN, I'm just going to type in GTN trainer, or in this case, I typed in G1000 PC trainer, as we can see right here. And I have the TXI trainer app, the aviation trainer app for GTN, and then I have down below, these are all the different PC trainers for the G1000. So I'm just going to select the Piper Archer, not playing favorites, it's just the first one. So as this pulls up, as the overview of what's available, the requirements there, it's got the software version that it's going with. Again, these are all NXI, and then I can add that to the cart. So again, please check those requirements before making a purchase. And in addition, on the GTN or TXI side, we just select that GTN Trainer Aviation app. And it's going to give us the option to download a couple different ones. So I'm going to select platforms. And down here at platforms, I have the GTN Trainer app, which is going to give me the link to the App Store, and the XI Trainer app. That's going to give me the link to that app. On the right-hand side, I've also got the link for the TXI Trainer. Then when I go to the Windows PC, when I click the available for download, that download link right there, then it gives me the option to download. Again, check your system requirements. Make sure you're able to run this before you try. And then that's all our options right there. We have GTN 500, 600, TXI, 620, all of the GPS navigators. So I hope that answers your question. Matt, do we have any others?
Nope, I believe that's going to be all of them.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us today, and stay safe and stay sharp. Talk to you later.